Cool. Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
Good evening, Jenny. I'm very well. How are you today?
Yeah, not so bad, thank you. Absolutely stunning day up here on the Yorkshire Wolds, which has been really nice.
It's super beautiful, isn't it?
It is really looking really nice up here at the moment. So hello to everybody who's able to join us. I'll just keep chatting for a while until we've got a few more people joining in, and then we'll get on with the conversation good and proper.
Great.
Good day working from home today, Joe?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Got a nice load of test samples lined up on that dresser behind you.
I know it's been busy. I've been in the warehouse the last couple of days. So yeah, kind of working on the next bottling and future bottlings. So it's been good. It's been productive.
Good. That's really to hear.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we've got a few more people joining in now. So I'll just give it another sort of 10, 15 seconds and then we'll get going.
Great.
Yeah, that dresser is definitely looking a lot fuller than a few weeks ago, isn't it?
It does. It keeps filling up. I need to get some of these back to the lab eventually. But yeah, this is the most recent stuff that I've pulled out on the lower levels.
Nice.
So that this is kind of, yeah, this is this week really working through that.
Good. And it's all tasting. I was about to say smelling, but that doesn't seem the right word, even though that sort of fits with nosing.
Yeah, it's a lot about that, all about the nosing. But no, it's all tasting good. It's nosing really good. Been going through we laid down some sherry casks in 2017. So it's some really beautiful pheno hogsheads I've been working through. Yeah. So it's been some interesting finds. Definitely.
Super. Okay, well, I think we've got a few more people joined on now, so we'll stop talking about future releases and go about past ones.
Back in time.
Yeah, go back in time. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Field to Bottle number 3. So this is our third Facebook Live that we're doing here remotely from the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. So we've got Joe at his house. I'm Jenny. I'm up here at the farm. In fact, I can do some of these fancy bits and bobs. So we've got Joe Clark, who's our whiskey director, and this week I've spelt his name right, so that's nice.
Thank you. I mean, we've only been working together for 3 years, Jen, you know.
Well, and the rest, yeah. So that's a good learning. Good to know that I can spell properly now. And then I'm Jenny, and I head up the marketing here at Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. So our Facebook Lives each Wednesday are called Field to Bottle, and they're because we're discussing a different aspect of our production process. So whether that's from the field to the bottle, and we're sort of jumping between a bottle week and a field, as it were, week. So the first week we did it was 2 weeks ago, and we talked about Distillery Project 001 and 002. Last week we were talking all about the farm. And this week for number 3, we're talking about Distillery Projects 003 and 004. So those are sat nicely in front of Joe just there, but I'll hand back over to Joe now to talk a bit more about what Distillery Projects actually are and give a bit of background into what we're talking about today.
Thanks very much, Jen. So so we're revisiting some old bottlings that we did very early on in the distillery's lifetime. So yeah, what we're actually tasting here, you know, sadly, if you've just come across us and you're just listening, you can't actually buy these. They're long gone. They're kind of part of our archive now, and kind of what bottles do remain of these largely squirreled away in collections by our kind of fans and followers. So the Distillery Project series was a kind of a set of young bottlings that we did that we called Maturing Malt, and they kind of showcase different kind of flavor profiles, different cask types in our warehouse, and really kind of followed our spirit from very early on, really through to the back end of last year when we launched our first whiskey. So they're kind of like pre-whiskey bottlings, and we did them in very, very small runs. So there was just 2,000 of each of these, and same with 1 and 2. And yeah, we never pushed them far and wide. At the moment, if you're looking for a bottle of Filey Bay, you can pick it up from numerous retailers and whiskey specialists. But for these, we just sold them at the distillery, so they were really just available for anybody who came to see us. They were really bought. I explained a little bit about this on the first video we did, but it's worth just recapping. You know, we never really intended to do these. You know, we're a bit different to other distilleries in that we've never done white spirits. So we don't make gin, we don't make vodka, we don't make liqueurs and that kind of thing. So when we opened to the public, Easter 2017, it was really a little bit tricky. We were like, well, what are people going to taste when they come around the distillery? And we were pretty brave. We stuck our necks out and we put out 1-year-old cask samples at the end of the tour, and it became very apparent quite quickly that, you know, actually people were tasting kind of 1.5-year-old kind of pre-whiskey that we'd made, and they were really enjoying it, and they wanted to buy it and take it home with them. So we kind of cracked on and we put spirit in a bottle much earlier than we ever intended, and you know, we were always kind of really blown away always by the response on them, and especially you know, the response that this one got, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So yeah, so they were kind of early bottlings for the distillery. They're a little snapshot into our warehouse at the time. So we bottled this one in it was in this kind of leading into the summer of 2018, so we had this just in time for our open day that year, and then this one followed into the winter, and yeah, as I say, they've all gone. They are no more. So if you've got a bottle at home and you happen to have one open, or you feel like opening a bottle that you've got, now's the time, you know. Good.
Yeah, so again, just to quick recap, because I think we've had a few more people just jump on since Joe's been speaking. But Distillery Projects, in a nutshell, was our exploration range. So thus far, it's all been about maturing malts, so exploring what our spirit can be in terms of the whiskey itself. That was crucial when we were in that tricky 3-year period for a new distillery before you can call it whiskey, when you've been distilling and you've laid cask down and you've put all that expense behind everything, but you still can't sell anything under the whiskey mantle. So that's why we chose the wordings maturing malts. So previously we spoke about 001 and 002, which were the first 2 releases. Now we're going to talk about 003 and 004. So as Joe said, 003 was from summer 2018, 004 was from about November 2018, so it was around just in time for Christmas. Both of them had not dissimilar cask inputs, but really quite different tastes. And actually 003 has my favourite ever tasting note on it, which made me smile when Joe gave me it to go onto the labels, which was soft, creamy and sweet with milk chocolate, stone fruits, banana splits, pink wafer biscuits, and orange zest. I really like the idea of pink wafer biscuits, which kind of give me endless memories of being in Burton Fleming Village Hall when I was a kid.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the absolutely amazing things about whiskey, and the fact that it is so evocative, and it will very quickly, if you allow it and if you spend the time with it, it will throw you back to your childhood quite quickly, especially when you've got something like this, which is really, you know, really kind of creamy, very fruity, and it's sweet, and it does have that kind of, for me, it's got a kind of sweet shop element to it as well. So yeah, it kind of takes you back, which is nice, you know. Nothing better than the sense of smell to trigger old memory. It's actually better than sight and sound. So yeah, it does, it kind of really can take you back. So that's nice. So that takes you back to when was it?
Well, Burton Fleming, and actually, to be honest, Hummonby, Village Halls, and kind of endless, I don't know, ballet shows and parties, all of these things.
Don't sound like great memories to me, but they're obviously nice to you.
A significant time ago. We won't talk about that. So do you want to just talk to us a bit more about the casks that went into 00?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah. So these just 2,000 bottles. So they were a combination of casks. So you know, small batch run. So each of 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this series, really a combination of 5, with the exception to 2. So this was 3 bourbon barrels and 1 STR wine cask, which we'll explain a little bit more about soon, and a Pedro Jimenez sherry hogshead. So this was the first kind of more outrightly sherry influenced of the series because of that, and that PX sherry hogshead, yeah, it did kind of great things to the spirit in there, even at such a young age. It brought loads and loads of colour. Really super active cask, and as you might expect with that cask type, if you know much about it, it does bring stacks of fruit, and it brings lovely kind of rich notes. It can bring quite a profound kind of chocolatey note and a dried fruit kind of sweet spiciness to it. So that was the makeup: 3 bourbon, 1 wine, which was the STR cask, and then the PX sherry hogshead. And yeah, as I say, it was the more sherry led of the range. So yeah, the other thing to consider with these, as well as them being a combination of casks, is they're also a combination of our 2 distillate styles, which I didn't really talk about in the last video we did, because it can get a little bit complicated. But not only are we unusual in the fact that we're a field to bottle distillery, and that we don't make kind of gin and white spirits and whatnot, but we do have 2 very distinctly styles of new make spirit. And when we talk about new make spirit, that's the spirit that we're making kind of week in, week out. Even now in this lockdown period, still flowing. And yeah, we have our kind of more traditional style, if you like, which just runs through our pot stills, and then we have a slightly arguably more innovative style for the industry, which is kind of run through a 4-plate rectifying column on the spirit still. I don't want to get too nerdy on it. I don't want to go too.
No, that's one for another field to bottle, but it is useful to point it out.
Yeah, sure. And so when we're in production at the distillery, for a period of time in the year, we're moving through the pot styles and then into the column styles, and it can fluctuate and vary a little bit, but we tend to do about 50-50 of the 2 spirit styles throughout the year. And so this was a combination. Now 2 of the casks in here, the PX hogshead and one of the bourbon barrels, was from the column spirit, whereas the others were from the pot style spirit that we do. So it's not just the casks that were coming together. There's also the 2 distillate styles, and especially when the casks were this young, the distillate style had a big say. If you have the 2 new makes side by side, the column stuff much cleaner, very light, against the pot stuff, which is a little bit heavier and it's a little bit fuller. And so when you have them in cask for a short period of time, the differences are quite pronounced. So bringing the 2 together in these, and with all of them, in fact, was really interesting, because not only are you thinking about the different casks and how they bring flavour, you're also thinking about the distillate styles and how they help to shape mouthfeel and kind of texture. Good. I'm rambling, aren't I? Am I?
No, well, a little bit, but that's okay. So we've got a question that's coming already. Okay. So just to quickly say to anybody else who's listening, if you've got any questions, please just bob them into the comment section underneath, and then we'll pull them up onto the screen and we'll answer them as and when. So it might be in the moment, but it might be towards the end of the program. That sounds very intense, doesn't it? The Facebook Live, but that also sounds like a mouthful. I'm not quite sure what to call it. Anyway, we'll answer them at the end as well. So this question comes from Paul. So the STR is it possible to use any other wine cask as an STR?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the ones that we use have previously held Rioja, and they are from Spain. But yeah, the process of making an STR cask, technically speaking, could be a wine cask from any other region. So for example, Avalon have used STRs in the past, which isn't surprising, because we share a link with them through Dr. Jim Swan, who worked with it very closely when the distillery was being set up. They're using actually US wine casks, or at least they were, and they may have used others as well. But I know from conversations that I've had with Ian that they were using US red wine, and I'm sure there are other distilleries using different wine casks of different origins that are being shaved, toasted, and recharred. But in the case of what we're using, it's Rioja. So it's Spain,
Super, thanks, Joe. So there's no other questions that have come in on 0 through 3. So I think what might be interesting is to talk about 004 now, and then we'll go back and have a kind of conversation about the 2 of them together. Yeah,
sure. So 04, obviously it followed. This was always intended, really, I think, fair to say, to be a kind of a slight closing chapter to this series of 4 bottles. you know, it was probably the hardest of them to put together, because that was such a hard act to follow. You know, I mean, I can remember when we did that on the open day. I can remember we had loads of people out for that open day. It was really, really like busy, really lovely day at the distillery, and there were so many people that absolutely loved it. I can remember thinking, well, this is absolutely fantastic. Everyone's really enjoying this, and it's like selling really quickly and everything. And then thinking, that's going to be a little bit tricky to follow. So this was a little bit harder in that respect. But yeah, with this, it's led. You know, there's really very little to no sherry influence in this whatsoever. So it's about bourbon and it's about the wine casks. So again, it was 5 barrels. It was 3 bourbon and 2 of the STR wine casks. It did have a little touch of a sherry barrel as well in there. Which actually, it was a sherry butt, so I used a bit of that just to help kind of tie it all together. So you had the 3 bourbon, and in the combination there, 2 of the bourbon casks were column, and the 2 STR wine casks were pot, and the other bourbon cask in the mix there was pot as well. So again, it was similar kind of ratios to this in terms of pot to column, but obviously with having no PX or really any major sherry influence, it flavor-wise very, very different. And of course, all the time throughout these, the spirit's getting older. So in here, this was kind of tipping around kind of 2.5 years old when it went to bottle. Certainly the older stuff in there was, and yeah, it is. You know, I can remember when we launched it, and I think most people when they were tasting them, especially side by side, it makes you work harder. So not only was it harder to put together, it makes you work harder from a tasting point of view. And the reason for that being is that it is deeper and it is more complex. You know, so it will. You know, I always mark, you know, our casks and whiskey generally higher the more entertaining I find them, and this will keep you engaged, I would say, a little bit longer. You know, this is really super lovely, fruity, upfront stuff, but with that, it will, you know, you can pour a glass of it, you can have a nose, have a sip, you can come back to it 10 minutes later, that glass will keep going and keep entertaining you. So yeah, it was arguably the more complex of the series, but that's not to say it was people's favorite either, you know.
Yeah, well, I really do like a 003, I have to say. Yeah. It just does. I just really like it. But
pleaser.
I've got some now. There you go. It's very nice. It's after 6. It's fine. But to be honest, at the moment, the Moscatel is winning it for me. I'm really enjoying it. Of an evening, which is lovely. And actually, a couple of the comments coming in. Someone talking about how STR is their favourites, and another comment from Paul saying, "Can't wait to see an STR single cask." And actually, that is what 006 was, or was that? You know, hang on, which way around was it? 5. I get it the wrong way around. 005 was a single cask STR, and so we'll be talking about that probably in about 2 weeks' time. I think we've got that one scheduled in for. So those 2 were the final 2 of the maturing malts in this current vein, the pre-whiskey maturing malts. Did 2 single casks to finish on, which went really well. So. Firstly, if anyone's listening and got any more comments or questions, then please do bob them into the comments box. Now, I think we'll just talk a bit more about the 2 bottlings themselves. And I think the really interesting thing about these ones was because we didn't have a gin, it was the way that we were able to draw people into the distillery in those first 3 years. And one of the really nice things was actually they then got picked up and kind of taken on. So interestingly, when we first started doing this, not very many people were talking about new make spirit and releasing their new make spirit as a thing. A couple of people had done them as special releases. So the Cotswolds had, I think someone in Australia, I think it was Starwood, but I'm not sure because the names all slightly changed from what the distillery was called to that. And now actually more's coming out. So I know one of the tastings that you did the other day, didn't you, Joe? There was some new make spirit from one of the newer English distilleries as well. But for when we were doing this 3 years ago, when we first started it, very few people were releasing anything that wasn't either brand new make or wasn't single malt whiskey. There wasn't anything else in between. Mm-hmm. So one of the nice things, I'm rambling a little bit, is that we got picked up by Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible, and each of the distillery projects got reviewed in the Whiskey Bible 2020, which was great. And actually 003 knocked it out of the park, really, with a 95 out of 100 score, and a quote which, I mean, from a marketing perspective, I absolutely love, which he started it off with, which was "just ridiculously beautiful," which just summed it up and was really nice. I love, just a lovely quote that we could use across lots of different things, and it still makes me smile and feel very proud whenever I read the reviews now.
Yeah, it was yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. You don't really see or very certainly when we were doing these kind of young pre-whiskey bottlings. You know, I think a lot of distilleries, you know, I think fair to say some might be a bit nervous about doing it, because you are, you know, you're giving people that insight into what's happening in your cask, in your warehouse very, very early on. You know, which traditionally in kind of single malt Scotch you just wouldn't do. You know, you just wouldn't see that kind of approach. You know, it's very much still considered, you know, an unfinished product at that stage. And yeah, I think you know, we were brave doing it. You know, we wouldn't have done it if they weren't tasting good ultimately. But yeah, it was certainly out there. Yeah, interesting. If there's any young distilleries thinking about doing it, you know, go for it. In my opinion, if you've got the cask and they're tasting good, it's a little bit tricky in terms of people getting their heads around them. But at the distillery, after someone had been around, seen the stills, and seen how we were making it, it kind of all made sense. Yeah. I think
we've got some questions coming in, so we can move on to this. So one from Matt Hill. So is there any difference in ABV between the pot and the column stills, and do they mature differently?
Sure, yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, when we're running just the pots, and our middle cut will average out about 73. That's what we're looking for there. So when the spirit run starts, you know, it's obviously it starts much stronger and it drops away throughout the distillation. So in our middle cut, which we cut really early on, and our middle cut is kind of short and arguably maybe shorter than a lot of other distilleries. Depends what style of spirit you want to make. But yeah, it's looking at 73% on the pots, but when we're on the column, we're much higher. It's only a 4-plate column, so it isn't making, you know, we're not kind of driving the spirit up to really, really high strengths, like you might expect in kind of grain whiskey production or indeed white spirit production. But we will cut in the middle cut on the columns. 86 is typically where we'll be. So yeah, you know, it's much stronger. But you're still retaining at that strength. You're still retaining a lot of the fruity character in the spirit. If you start driving up into the 90s, then you drive all your character. Well, you know, the part of the character that's going to make your whiskey really fruity and interesting starts to kind of be stripped away. So, short answer, yes. Pots 73 in the middle cut, column 86 in the middle cut.
And did they mature differently? What's the impact that has on the cask? Oh.
Yeah, so in terms of development, you know, we did notice, you know, at least in theory, you'd find, you know, all the column stuff, because you're stripping out more impurities in the distillate, that when you put that into barrel, you know, it's almost a kind of cleaner slate, you know, for the cask to put its footprint on. So, you know, the column, certainly, like there was a sherry cask that we laid down the column style, like the PX one in there, which we laid down kind of early in production in 2016. They had quite a rapid maturation effect on them. You know, the casks are very active, and we did keep them down in the still house for a bit where they're kind of hotter and drier. So yeah, I do see a difference. It's really interesting now as they're developing more. So, you know, as more of the two styles are coming of age, and you can kind of go like for like across a month of bourbon fillings. Yeah, you are seeing some differences. It's hard to say exactly if that difference is going to get bigger as they mature onwards, or whether that differences will narrow in a little bit. But certainly mouthfeel is very different. Yeah.
Okay, they're both great, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Super. Okay, so
great question.
Another question here, which is about how you characterize each cask and whether you use any software. So Joe has an exceptionally spreadsheet that scares me every time I see it. But other than that, Joe, how do you characterize each cask?
I'm pretty. I guess I'm pretty old school. I guess it's fun. There it is. It's the book with all the notes in, and that's what I take to the warehouse every time. And that's where the bulk of notes go. But yeah, when I'm working at kind of final cask selection, certainly putting batches together, you need to make sure that you're getting, you're recording that information, slightly more organized fashion than scribbles in a notebook. So yeah, I drop it down. But it's as simple as that, Jeff. It's not. It's really. I don't have a kind of sophisticated Distiller 3000 machine that you punch the information in and it does that work for you. It really is largely down to just working through them and just kind of diligent sensory work and taking your time, and having the time to do it. Which right now, lockdown, great, plenty of time.
Super. Okay, and then another question coming in here from Ian Helliwell, and I'll let you go for that one, Joe.
Yeah, sure. So that's an interesting one. So in terms of like the double barrel thing, it's from my experience, is really just a terminology thing. You could argue that the Moscatel cask that we've done would qualify as kind of double barreling. We kind of finished off bourbon matured spirit in a different cask type. So the Moscatel is the most recent release if you're just watching. So that spirit has seen maturation in 2 cask types. So kind of could qualify into that. If you're looking at a more kind of longer term kind of thing, we do have some spirit that's been matured in bourbon and it's now sitting in a different cask type, and those casks are going to sit for quite a long time. That again would qualify into that statement. It's a term that's pretty broad, so you could, double barrel could refer to something that's, like the Moscatel finish that we've done. And equally, it could refer to, maturation in 2 different casks and bringing them together, kind of like what we've done here. So I guess yes is the answer to that. But would we use the term double barrel on the label? Probably not. Well, it's certainly not on the cards at the moment.
Okay, great. So that's the end of the questions from this week for the moment. So if there's any more, if you could just pop them into the comment section before we start to wrap up, that would be super. Thank you very much. There's one question that came up last week that we missed it came up just as we were finishing the broadcast, so I missed it. So I will bring that up now, which is was asking about whether there's the thought of wine on the agenda. So this followed on from 30 minutes talking about the farm, the type of soil that we use, and why that meant that it felt like a natural progression for both beer and whiskey. I think the wine on the agenda is, this is something that we discuss regularly, but usually when we're about 3 bottles of wine down. And it's something that we definitely thought about quite a lot. There's some lovely south-facing slopes here at the farm. But at the moment, it's not properly on the agenda, though. There are some fantastic English wines coming out of Yorkshire. A really good one from our local village called Killam, which is called From Westow Vineyards, which I had a very nice bottle of sparkling wine by them the other day and thoroughly enjoyed it. Another question coming in. So are we planning on looking at quarter cask? Another one for you, Joe. All of these.
Yeah, sure. We haven't laid any down. The smallest cask size we've got laid down is the 200 litre bourbon. So we haven't gone down the kind of smaller cask route. But yeah, quarter casks, why not? Yeah, fairly certain we will at some stage look to fill some. There's a lot of really great whiskey matured in quarter casks, and never say never. Might see some rolling through the distillery shutters at some point, getting filled.
Okay, and I think if that's everything, I'll just do some usual plugs about signing up to the newsletter if you're not already, because it definitely is where you get you get to hear everything first that we're doing. So all our first releases, come to you, any pre-orders and things like that. So if you are interested in that, then do sign up to our newsletter. Every month we send out a very newsy newsletter. You just missed this month, I'm afraid, but next month will be coming. And you can find the links to that on our Facebook and on our website as well. Otherwise, Moscatel and Second Release are still very much on the website. And if you fancy a nice bottle of something over the bank holiday weekend, then do put your orders in. Although I've just said that, but I'm not sure if you ordered now whether it would get to you in time for the bank holiday. So don't hold me to that one. And I think, judging from comments and things like that, I think that's probably about everything. So that's bang on 30 minutes, or 30 minutes, 30 seconds, Joe. So well done for our aim of a 30-minute broadcast.
These are tasting side by side. It's really interesting. It's really nice to revisit.
Yeah.
And taste them. Yeah. It's a good excuse to keep pouring them, Jenny. So, look forward to the next one.
I'm talking to you tomorrow morning. So which one's your favourite, actually? That's probably the best note to end on, isn't it?
You know what? It is the 4 out of these two. Yeah. That is a crowd pleaser, and it's more upfront, but this is just a little bit deeper, and it's just got a little bit more to kind of sink your teeth into, for want of a better phrase. It just kind of, more complexity, more depth.
Nice. And out of the full 4 of this first series, so 001, 002, 003, and 004, which is your favourite?
I think I always had the soft spot for number 2.
Okay.
Really, again, because it was, more with kind of, the view of the Filey Bay house style that we're aiming to get to, in terms of the lighter, much cleaner style. And that, to me, is probably the one to go to. Certainly on a day like today, given how warm it is.
Yeah.
It's very, very clean.
Lovely up here.
Yeah.
Great. On that note, I hope it's very lovely with wherever you are too. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. I don't think we're going anywhere for a while. So have a lovely week and a long weekend. Bye.
Brilliant. Thanks. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.